Good evening. Thank you for joining us again for another session of this learning event series. And we'd like to welcome everyone to Learning Event Series 3.0. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the legal dimensions of the Dumaguete Reclamation Project. But before that, I hope everyone has read the House rules. We apologize for the slight delay today. We had some technical difficulties, but everything has been fixed. And we hope to emphasize, though, that tonight we will be taking questions not just on Zoom, but also on FB Live. So if you have any questions, you can type your questions in at the Q&A box here on Zoom or on FB Live. We have a team that will collect the questions and we will be answering them, or our speaker will be answering them at the end of tonight's talk. All right, this learning event series would not have been possible without the Dumaguete City Host Lions Club and the Rotary Club of Dumaguete South. We would like to thank you for making possible this gathering where we could learn a little bit more about the issues surrounding the Dumaguete Reclamation Project and dig a little bit deeper, more than just the sound bites. We get to, thresh out the details a little bit more. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from Attorney Golda Benjamin. She obtained her law degree from the University of the Philippines and is a practicing lawyer as well as a current professor at the SU College of Law. She is also the program director at the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, an international nonprofit organization based in London, England. Let's listen to her insights on the legal dimensions of the proposed reclamation project. Hello, Attorney Benjamin.
Thank you, Attorney Zara. Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to put up my slides and I'd like to get a confirmation as soon as my slides are up. How are you, Zara?
Good.
I can't, it still says host disabled participant sharing.
I think our IT will be helping. Okay.
I see it now, and I just need a confirmation if you're seeing the slides now on the screen.
I'm seeing it on the screen.
All right, I'm gonna put it on presentation mode now.
Okay.
All right, does it fit well in the screen? Is it all right?
Yes, it fits well.
All right, I'll start now. Good evening again, everyone. The title of my presentation tonight is Politicians' Promises, the 174-hectare unsolicited reclamation project, and of course, the law. So in terms of the sequence, the flow of my discussion tonight, I'm going to start with some broad strokes discussion on progress and development for the Dumaguete, some ideas. I decided to start with this because I've been hearing that those who oppose this project are anti-development. And I'd like to correct that impression. We are not anti-development. The second part of my presentation is just an explanation and a review, especially those who have not had a chance to watch the council hearings. So I'm going to describe exactly how we, the people of Dumaguete, were deprived of our right to be heard. And then, of course, because I've been tasked to do a legal discussion, I'm going to discuss why this is a corrupt contract under the definitions of our law. And of course, I'll end with what can we do. So I'll start now. I know a lot of things for sure in my life, and the statement on the screen today is one of those things. I believe that we don't need an unsolicited reclaimed island to bring more progress and development to Dumaguete City. I know that for sure. And these are some of the development goals that I think a good city should have. There are 8, but I'd like to invite everyone to the 3 points where I placed check marks. I think a city can generate jobs, or we should believe that a city can generate jobs if we are able to promote it as an investment destination for commerce, trade, And for Dumaguete City, there's potential for us to be a business process outsourcing hub for the country, especially because we are a university town. We have the talent to actually have diverse business process outsourcing services, not just invoice facilities, but also even in terms of high-level services like architecture, even the law, legal review, and all these kinds of investments. Number 6, I also believe that if we want to have a progressive city, we all need to have transparency and responsible community participation in governance. We always hear it even in local and international events that we need to co-shape the future of our city. And finally, one of the development goals of a progressive and well-developed city is to sustain and maximize utilization of what we have, land and resources, in a manner that will protect the environmental integrity of the city. So I don't understand why we have to force a project that destroys, that unavoidably and undeniably will destroy so much of our natural resources when we have alternatives. And so some of the more specific things, so the more specific ideas. So I'll just discuss 3. On tourism, because Dumaguete is growing to be a tourism hub, we can actually go and adopt modern marketing technology to pull in visitors to our city. We can develop highly skilled livelihood communities to support the tourism infrastructure. On governance, again, we can strengthen CSO participation. We can comply with the Anti-Red Tape Act so that our businesses are able to transact in a fast and efficient manner. And finally, for investment and revenue, of course, we have to improve and modernize our tax collection systems. We do massive and aggressive investment promotion activities, and then we can also build the dream of really building high-skilled, high-level BPO centers and try to aim to become one of the top 10 BPO hubs in the country. But before you mistake me for presenting a platform for a political position, I just want to correct that. These were actually Mayor Remolio's plans and promises to us, signed, budgeted in the 2017-2023 Dumaguete City Comprehensive Development Plan. Those are his plans, not mine. And after 4 years, what happened? Does our mayor feel that he has failed his people, that he has actually failed to deliver on his comprehensive development plan? And just a fun trivia, if you do a simple control F of this CDP, you can't find reclamation. The word reclamation does not appear there. I looked at our disaster risk and management plan also of the city, and I was very sad because one of the goals even of that plan, also by Mayor Remolio, again signed by Mayor Remolio, says that one of his goals is to actually increase coral production. Awkward word for the scientist in the room today, but he wanted to increase coral production. So again, my question is, after 4 years, what happened? But of course, I'm trained in the law, and I'm now going to jump into the law. So again, as a matter of review, all PPP contracts that the city mayor will enter into must go through prior authorization by our city council. And that will come in the form of a resolution. So any contract that the city mayor will enter into, he needs the consent or the authorization of the Sanggunian. Under our PPP ordinance, it has to be in the form of a resolution. But our PPP ordinance also has a big clause that during the consideration of this particular PPP contract by the Sanggunian, a public consultation or hearing must be conducted. And after sufficient and enough hearing out of the public, then that's when the mayor can go to the private sector proponent and then sign the contract. And then the third step is for the mayor to go back to the city council. Because as we remember, at least I see a lot of lawyers and law students in the room, the city council serves as the check and balance of the extreme power, the magnitude of the power of the mayor. So he goes back to his city council, presents the contract now signed, and then tells the council, can you please approve or affirm the terms and provisions of this contract? At that point, we can no longer amend the contract because remember, we have a private sector partner in this case. I mentioned in one of my talks that we can amend, but it's very, the margin is very, very slim. It's only if the amendment is not going to substantially change the nature of the contract. But even if we amend, we again need to get authorization, we again need to go back to our private sector proponent, and then we again need to go back to the council to have an affirmation via an ordinance. So it's quite clear. This provision is not even vague, it's very clear. But the question now is, how were they able to force the city council to skip public hearing? But I'd like to clarify first, because the mayor seems to be promoting this narrative that there's nothing to worry about, that we are alarmist because the DENR and the PRA will still conduct consultations. That is correct. But his mistake is he forgot that under the law, there are actually two major consultations that should happen. Consultation number one is when the draft PPP contract is presented to the council. And who has the duty to consult? It's the city council. So even his info drive, which there seems to be a flip-flopping. I've been following their press releases. Sometimes they call it consultation, sometimes an info drive. But definitely that info drive is not the consultation provided for in our law, because the duty rests on the city council. And these nice, expensive info drives are actually being done by the mayor. And I think based on the pictures today, by Councilor Ramon as well. So that's a requirement in the law. And then when the city decides that yes, Cuerpo is the company that we want to deal with, we think it is qualified, it has excellent experience in reclamation, yes, we believe in reclamation as the way to go for progress and development in the city, then the council may approve and give the mayor the authority to sign the joint venture agreement. And then consultation number two, based on various laws, it is when the city will apply for an ECC with the DENR. But common sense will tell us that the consultation in the DENR will, of course, focus on just the environmental concerns, not the constitutional problems, not the issues on whether or not this private sector component submitted complete materials, not whether or not private sector proponent is financially capable to actually execute a 23 billion contract. So to be able to really promote this narrative, this incomplete, inaccurate narrative, is also a form of deception, which is actually a bad sign of a leader. And I will not stay silent if they want to do that. This is what they think they can get away with. They think that they can hide and they can block consultations at the city council level because anyway, we're still going to the DENR for consultation. That has no basis in law, and it has no basis in fundamental principles of good governance. And that's why we should protest. Next, there seems to be a misunderstanding. And before this talk, I really took a moment to listen to the entire video of Mayor Remolio, and he was speaking to the scholars in our city. And I think, I may be wrong, I think they feel that a joint venture agreement is not a PPP contract. So I'd like to explain this. Under our PPP ordinance, there are several types of PPP contracts that we can enter into. And that's why it's called PPP modalities. How do we intend to have a relationship with the private sector? It could be through a build and transfer agreement with a company. It could be a rehabilitate and transfer agreement with a company. And yes, it can be a joint venture agreement. So when the ordinance and all the other related laws talk about a draft PPP contract, they could be talking about a draft joint venture contract, a draft BOT contract, or a draft lease contract. That's the kinds of PPP contracts that are allowed under the law. So when they say there's no PPP contract, there's just a MOA, that's just really, for lack of a better and nicer term, ridiculous. Next, even if we look at the resolution signed by our own PPP selection committee, when they recommended the award of this contract, they also mentioned the term This joint venture agreement shall be signed within 5 calendar days from the issuance of a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the joint venture agreement. Not a MOA, not an MOU, but a joint venture agreement. So they're done with this stage, okay? And that was what exactly our council did. They authorized the mayor to sign this joint venture agreement. And they got away with it only because the transmittal letter says attached are copies of the memorandum of agreement signed by our city legal officer, Attorney Manuel Arbon, and our city mayor, also an attorney. But if you look at the attached document, even the title alone will tell us that this is the draft joint venture agreement. Because when the private sector proponent presents an unsolicited proposal, they need to attach under the law a draft JVA or whatever PPP contract they want to present to the city. So this was submitted, proposed as a JVA, negotiated as a JVA, awarded as a JVA based on the resolution of the PPPSC, and then sent to the City Council as a JVA. Again, in my presentation, I looked at the entire document 11 times. The phrase joint venture agreement was mentioned. The phrase memorandum of agreement, 0. Okay, it only appears when it talks about the MOU or the MOA that will later on be entered into when the city does decide to apply for reclamation. So again, I just, when I was watching the hearing, I couldn't believe it. It's like a blind leading the blind. People voting on something that is obviously incorrect. And the document was also incomplete because section 2 of this document enumerates annex documents like the feasibility study, subcontractor agreements, which ideally the private sector proponent or Cuerpo should have attached to their unsolicited proposal. Because that's how the city evaluates whether or not this company is legit. It was not even attached. And I think even if mangutang taog 1,000 pesos, yan niingon nga muni akong ato ang evidence of the utang sa 1,000 and ay niingon nga in Annex A, I think you don't even need to be a lawyer. Your first question is, where is the Annex A? But again, our city council, out of gross neglect of duty, didn't even dare ask, where are the other evidence, the other documents? So it's really quite sad also for Dumaguete. When I was watching the hearing, it was a moment of shame for me. Naulaw ko sa akong mga kaila na nagtanaw tanan. And I have to remind everyone, and I'd like to thank the Salonga Center, I'd like to remind everyone that a MOA with Cuerpo is not even required to start the Philippine Reclamation Authority process. The city just needs a letter of intent, a council resolution expressing no objection to the proposed reclamation project. This also has the condition that the city already went through extensive public consultation. At least the mayor lost that in earlier hearings by virtue of a motion, I think, by Councilor Arbas. And then a resolution from the council authorizing the LGU to file an application with the PRA. When the city faces PRA, and it is in a joint agreement that it is the city only that will be the proponent of the reclamation application, it cannot and should not bring the Cuerpo documents. So my question now, from a common sense and a legal perspective, is why are we so adamant? Why are we not withdrawing the authority of the mayor to sign this beast called a memorandum of agreement invented through a transmittal letter by our legal officer and our mayor, who is a lawyer? Why are we insisting on that when it's not required in the Philippine Reclamation Authority rules? So it's really curious why they're trying to do that. My next question is, why is this joint venture agreement a corrupt contract? And I'd like to clarify that corruption has several phases in the law, in our Philippine law. It's not just the typical bringing money to the house of a politician in the dead of the night. It's not that. A JVA or a contract can be corrupt if, for example, you award it to an entity, a company that is not qualified to do the work. It's corrupt because it will endanger your people. They're gonna reclaim for 3 years and wala sila nahibalan ani nga negosyo. Even if may akong gripo dere madaot sa balay, dili ko nagway nako suguon ang usa ka kuan ang akong bana nga architect. Di na siya kabalo mag-ayo og gripo. At least he tries, but usahay mo surrender siya. Kay patabang gid siya og plumber, someone who's trained for that. So even common sense alone will explain to us why the law makes that a corrupt contract. Secondly, the law also makes it corrupt when the government enters into a contract that is grossly disadvantageous to the government, and also when the government actually manifestly favors, without reason, favors a particular supplier. And usually based on our jurisprudence, and volunteer lawyers are already compiling the cases decided both by the Supreme Court and the Sandigan Bayan, the badges of this kind of corrupt action is when the government officials make shortcuts. So for example, they award a contract even if the documents are incomplete. They award the contract by skipping so many steps. The jurisprudence is already rich, and it's very concerning because, again, our city council is packed with lawyers. The PPP selection committee is packed, well, at least has 2 lawyers based on what I see on the document that we have so far. So why again is EM Cuerpo not qualified? First, we are sure that EM Cuerpo is not a reclamation company. Classic procurement, the first thing you're going to ask if a corporation is applying for something or a government contract, you go to their Securities and Exchange Commission documents. And if you look at that, they even amended it in 2018. There's no reclamation. If you look at their own website, they have no reclamation experience. Now, just today, breaking news, I finally got a copy of our Swiss challenge ad. This is when we say, we have EM Cuerpo now, and we think EM Cuerpo is qualified, but because we are trying to find a better deal, we're going to publish it in the newspaper so that other companies can outbid EM Cuerpo. This is from the newspaper. They cannot deny this anymore because we just got a copy. It's an official copy. One of the major points from the Swiss challenge ad is that the private sector proponent must have completed similar or related projects. And we know that EM Cuerpo has not done that. And so we go to 4.2 because private sector proponents are also allowed to collaborate. Kanang naa siya subcontractor, pwede siyang work with other companies, but our own ad says that each member of the collaboration must be disclosed during the pre-qualification stage. So kung naa kay kauban, kay dili day nimo kaya ang reclamation component, dapat imo siyang i-disclose. And in this project, nag-promise pa sila og mga yacht club, mga helipad, dapat ilagyo nang i-prove nga makabuhat gid sila ana. And even if, and so it has to be disclosed during the pre-qualification stage. So that brings us to the question, if EM Cuerpo is not a reclamation company, is it then true that they have a Chinese partner that is verified from their records in the stock exchange of Hong Kong? They are, among many other businesses, a reclamation company. But in the Philippines, they are not registered in the Securities and Exchange Commission. They do not have a PCAB license, and our joint venture agreement requires them even to have a PCAB license. Another disturbing fact is that this Polechanga apparently entered into a memorandum of understanding with EM Cuerpo as early as 2019. It was the company that actually offered to assist and submit a proposal to EMCI, EM Cuerpo. Sila ang ni-offer nga, uy, kami buhat sa inyong reclamation. And EM Cuerpo agreed. It makes sense. Common sense, it agreed, of course, because dili man sila reclamation company. But they only submitted in November 2019. So the premise here is that Polechanga already knew about Dumaguete. We have been scoped by this Polechanga. They found a company in the Philippines, a tiny one, definitely not able to execute a 23 billion contract, and then proceeded to, in my guess, probably write the entire thing, write the entire proposal. And I'm not going to go through the national security implications because I don't have time. I'm going to go through whether or not they can afford. So I've already presented this in the council. The contract is 23 billion. The net worth of the company is only 1.4 billion. I've asked bankers of some of the biggest banks in the Philippines. I've asked so far 5, and they said that based on the FS, they're definitely not gonna lend 23 billion to this company. It's just not possible based on their FS. And I hope the city council would have the humility to actually bring in bankers to testify on this issue, or actually to start by asking the members of the PPP selection committee to explain how did Cuerpo justify that they can fund this project. And if you look at this slide, they promised the heavens to Dumaguete. Raw land reclamation, I've asked big reclamation companies na matino diri sa Pilipinas, their costing is 70,000 per square meter. So, kanang mga bright diri og math, alayon lang to compute. It's 70,000 per square meter. We are reclaiming 174 hectares of land. Okay? Aside from that, they promised so many things: wastewater, esplanade, ferry port, and they also promised to build so many things under horizontal developments. What is curious is that the mayor is saying that this project also includes protection sa mga dagkong balod sa tinago kay sige na gibagyo ang tinago. But if you look at the project cost, it actually does not include the environmental protection component, shoreline protection, and kaning naa sa bottom sa atong slide. Of course, there could be an argument. They can say, oh, if all na diha sa similar facilities, ay pwede na ibutang diri sa facilities. But we know if we're drafting a contract and dili talayhang mauwat sa atong kapartner, maingon ta, oh, kung imo na siyang i-support, kani nga imong gipang promise na environmental protection, di ibutang atos lista. Anyway, nagbutang naman ta daag lista, di ibutang daan. Making it very broad is legally risky because the company can argue up to the Supreme Court and up to God that is not covered by the project cost. So again, gross neglect of duty on the part of the city council when they refuse to really do the enough due diligence in relation to this contract. And that's why I'm angry, because this is also very embarrassing for the city. This is our first major PPP contract. And in all the international reports on investor behavior, one of the major factors that turn off investors is instability in government and corruption. Investors don't want to deal with governments na walay klaro. And if we continue doing this, and we're already on national media, it just attracts the sleazy type of investors. Katong mga tarong na investors, di na muhikap sa Dumaguete, kay pataka-taka ng Dumaguete, hadlok na kay sila, kay what if ma-national media na po sila. In terms of land sharing, 51% will go to the government. But the government share will be divided. 60% will go to PRA, the rest will go to the city. But Dumaguete also agreed that the 30% for roads and open spaces, which a total of 52.2 hectares, will be taken out only from its share. Wala ganit siya ni ingon ni EM Cuerpo nga bahinon ko lagoy nato. Ni dako biya kay ning 52 hectares, magama patag wastewater treatment niya. Ambot ug unsa kadako pila ka hektar pud na inyong buhaton anang wastewater treatment. So again, you really see that whose interests are we serving here? Are we serving the interest of the city of Dumaguete or this private proponent just because they're waiving 23 billion worth of investments? On ancillary shares, they said, or the joint venture agreement says that we are going to get 25% net share, which is good. Okay? Which is good. 25% pwede na. Okay? Pwede na karon kanang makalma na ko, okay ra ko 25% sige. But look at the ancillary businesses that we agreed to. Asa man ang taon ana ang milyon-milyon ang kita. Potentially wireless communication, but I'm not sure if it's the business itself or the infrastructure. Potentially, geriatric center if it is the SOSI type of hospitals for old sick people. I don't know. And because we don't have the documents, we don't know the financial projection of this project. And I even shared to a few people that even the term net share, because it is not defined in our joint venture agreement, later on magka-problema pa ta. I'm involved in a small arbitration case because I do international commercial arbitration on the side. And that's precisely one of the issues raised by the company. They said, net share will only start to kick in once we recover everything we invested into this project. Usa pa daw magsugod ang net share kwintahanay. So if there are already definitions under the law or in some other accounting practice, put it in the contract. Otherwise, you put Dumaguete in economic danger. Malugi ta. Next, on the jobs. Sige magigug kadungog ani. And it is normal for a mayor to have all the politicians' typical promises, jobs, jobs, jobs. But under our joint venture agreement, it's not true. It's not true, despite what the mayor said in one info drive na, Dumaguete dress na sa yun kuno tanan. The language is priority in hiring of manpower. And we know that that provision already exists in our national law. But we have investments in Manila, na tibuok building, puros insik angga man. Okay? And we know that that's very difficult to find remedies. You can't just let this 23 billion company come in, build for 3 years, destroy our marine protected areas, and then say, oh, you're not hiring all Dumaguete, so I'm going to kick you out, or I'm going to end the contract. Come on, let's be realistic. Okay, magdamgo na tang, mahitabo na, di na mahitabo. There's also no remedy mechanism in the law except for rescission, which is undang ta sa contract, which we know will not happen, 100%. Sure ko ana, di na mahitabo. Okay, next. Letter K is an obligation of Dumaguete. So it says Dumaguete will adopt all proper measures to enable the PSP to hire and engage foreign personnel. And we know this because this is China's business model. They have big projects, they bring in their own technical people so that they can control the technology, they can control the communications, etc., etc. And we need to remember that during the term of the joint venture agreement, it is Cuerpo who will be managing the business. And we know in basic labor law that as manager, you also have the power to decide who to hire and who to fire. Yung manay trabaho o day-to-day work of a manager. Co-owner bitaw ta sa city, pero dili kita ang mag-manage. Sila ang magbuot. They also say that we're going to get taxes. Fine, we may get taxes later on after all the natural resources we have identified as potentially at risk have already been destroyed. But we agreed that we will waive all regulatory fees and local for the construction of the project. Reclamation alone will take at least 3 years. After that, this company will still build other components of the project, therefore prolonging the time where we have waived all regulatory fees and local taxes. So again, my question, ano sa pamanta mag-earn ani? Okay? The city share. We can charge real property taxes. But what if we go to court, challenge that provision, and they lose? And so this particular company will just say, I lease na lang, developer's rights na lang. Can we really tax real property taxes to a non-owner? No, we cannot. Okay. And so, ladies and gentlemen, these are a few of my slides because I have run over time and I apologize to the organizers. These people on the board are those who have voted to actually authorize the mayor to sign the contract. Okay. Now, what we need to do now, because we're Dumaguete City, is to reach out to as many of these people as possible, to really encourage them to think very close, very, very well, their future as professionals, as leaders of the city, because the legal risk increases every day. Okay? Attorney Carissa Tolentino Maxino is vice mayor. She doesn't have a vote, but if this comes to a tie, she has a critical break the tie vote. So we also need to give them correct verifiable information. And that's why I've been working so hard to really invite all the experts, to give them the kind of information that they need, because I care for these people. Some of these people are my colleagues, some of these people are my students, some of them are friends of my father. So this is not like your typical away in the Manila nga aktivista go, go, go. This is also about community. So I'm always asked, what else can we do kung dili mi abogado? And I always tell people, this is the fight for our home and a fight for our children, a fight for my 1-year-old who's giggling outside my door right now. And so we need to find the face of our protest. It will be beautiful, it will be strong, and it will carry Dumaguete with faith, love, and courage. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you continue to fight for our home.
Thank you, Attorney Golda. That was a very comprehensive overview, and I'm sure that even those who had not been following or maybe have missed out on some details was able to glean at least the essence of the issues. We appreciate that you have given a basis for development goals, because I think one of the louder counters to the no's is that, you know, you're anti-development, like you said, but then there are bases that we can use to guide our decisions in terms of development. You also gave ideas taken from the comprehensive development plan of the mayor himself. So thank you for presenting that. Now, we have some questions here that I will be reading. They've been sent in advance from our Facebook page, and there are also new questions. I will go through them one by one and maybe ask some follow-ups. Okay, let's start with the first one. Can we ask help from PRRD, President Duterte?
I don't know. I don't know President Duterte, but if you do, maybe he'll help. He's been quite supportive of the reclamations in Manila. But ask if you have contacts, if you feel that in the halls of power there are people that can help Dumaguete, do ask them. Make sure that it's just aligned with your values. Out of full disclosure, I don't like President Duterte, so I'm not going to ask help from him, because I also believe that the strength and heart of the Dumaguete people will be enough for this fight. But the love of the entire country and the world will carry us through. So,
right. Thank you. I think I appreciated what you said, that, you know, this is about community, and ultimately even the discussions that we're having, they're amongst people we know, people we grew up with, and you know, have had contact with in some form or way. And so we would really appreciate you know, good discourse, at least an intelligent exchange of ideas, and hopefully and a way to enlighten each other. Okay, so there are other questions here asking about what are the other legal remedies we can use to override the decision of the council or bar the implementation of such project.
okay, there are several. So I'm going to run through them. First, the court-based or the judicial mechanism. So we are exploring writ of kalikasan. So writ of kalikasan, there's two broad goals, broad grounds. One is if our constitutional right to a balanced and healthful ecology is violated, it's critical that we really present an evidence already that the contract is signed, or that there's already some level of damage. So the bar is quite high, and that's why we're studying it very closely, because we have seen a lot of communities also actually succeed in getting a writ of kalikasan. The second ground is when you're threatened with a violation, by an unlawful act on the part of a public official, in this case, our public officials, involving environmental damage, that will prejudice our life, health, and property. So it's quite high also, the threshold. So that's one. Of course, another one is getting an injunction. So there are groups of lawyers already that are ready as soon as this MOU, which is actually a joint venture agreement, is signed, that they're immediately going to court and going to ask for an injunction. If the city is also not going to present the documents yet, they're also going to ask for the documents through mandamus and prohibition and all these other remedies. There is a remedy that will not stop the project, but I think it's also important to mention, and that is filing cases under the Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. There are also legal remedies that are not judicial based. So I've heard a lot, and I've been in conversations, very interesting, great discussions on what we call the local initiative. So unsa man ni, it's when 1,000 registered voters of a city will file a petition in the Sanggunian for the purpose of directly proposing, enacting, or amending an ordinance. It's an exciting legal remedy because it has not been tested quite well. So murag, ano siya, it's a dare in the law. It's a very good provision, has not been used extensively. So what is essentially this will do is that the people themselves will pass an ordinance. So what kind of ordinance? We could say an ordinance that, I don't know, prohibits reclamation, period, massive. And if you win that, we can essentially stop this contract. The only thing is we also have to be very realistic. The time period is quite long. So the people need to send it to the Sanggunian. If they do not act on it in 30 days, then we go through, we have 90 days to collect signatures. We have to work with COMELEC because COMELEC will be managing this. So it's quite, there's a lot of moving pieces, but that's also a possibility. So non-judicial, but I hope that the city council members, especially those who voted to support the mayor's mission, will not let it come to this, because local initiative in this form, with this context, is like a slap on their faces. It's like telling them, the registered voters of Dumaguete are so fed up with you, you're not doing your job, so we're gonna present an ordinance that will essentially do your job. And we don't want that.
Right.
This is about the community. Yeah, so these are the legal options.
Right. And I think the reason why you emphasize that we need to give the council correct and verifiable information is hopefully with the information that they need, there would be some guidance and perhaps, a presentation of another perspective that they can look at and make their decisions based on that. All right. But so just to follow up on that, if, these remedies take time, for example, and let's say the MOA is signed, it's applied for with the PRA, I mean, the city applies for with the PRA, what happens? Is there any other way to stop the action from proceeding, or are the people bound by the procedures and, we'll have to see this process begin?
Right. Thanks, Zara. I'm comforted by the fact that even if they start the PRA process, a key component of the PRA process is the DENR process, and that's getting the ECC. So that's another battleground. Of course, those who have been engaging on environmental issues for the longest time, they have the expected and normal fear that once this goes to the DENR, tapos na ang laban, because there's also a lot of distrust with the DENR. Remember, this is the agency that allowed for Dolomite in the midst of a pandemic, spending millions, saying that this is the right way to go. This is the same agency that still continues to give permits to mining companies that do not at all follow sustainability rules. And these companies are even questioned by their fellow mining companies that do strive to be responsible operators in our community. So this level of distrust should fuel our fear that as soon as the city council lets go of their duty, as soon as the city council insists to go on with this gross neglect of duty on their part, matatapos na ang laban. Okay, but I'm a restrained optimist. I still want us to fight if they continue with this, we still have to fight at the DENR.
Right. Okay. There's another question to follow up on that. It says here, since the laws have been bent or broken, who can compel the mayor and the councillors to follow the law, or who can prosecute them for not following the law? I believe you answered that we have recourse to the Graft and Corrupt Practices Act. Is that the only way?
To follow the law, I think an injunction. An injunction, the purpose is to stop them from doing it. But for them to follow the law, our laws are there's so many shortcomings in our laws. And so there's also that thin line when the law allows them the discretion to decide whether or not the project is good for the city. And that's precisely the power of the city council. If they say, we're going to put back our resolution of no protest because we feel that the protest going on here is just very minor. Our mayor seems to trivialize the protest, dili lang daw taga Dumaguete. And so this council, if sobriety and a sense of, decency will not invade their bodies, and they will realize, oh, we're representatives of the people, there's no legitimate protest, we're gonna pass the resolution of no objection again. Then that's really the death of democracy.
All right. And so the only recourse is prosecution, as you have mentioned that this is a corrupt contract, and the law for that is what you mentioned, the Graft and Corrupt Practices Law.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That is the remedy that is judicial based. That is the remedy in the language of the law. But we should never forget that the actual remedy is actually the power of the people. Power of protest, power of good analysis, so that we're able to convince them and just really increase the pressure every day. Try to find as many documents as possible. If, for example, one of the people who signed the resolution, the members of the PPP selection committee, reach out to them, talk to them, kung sa manigi pa appeal ba this negotiation, because if not, then encourage them to speak out and speak the truth in the council, because we already saw what happened yesterday. They tried to stop a member of the youth sector from speaking and even close to bullying that person. Second, they tried to stop, they did succeed in stopping a member of the PPP SC committee from speaking. And I won't be surprised if they're just going to say on Monday, oh, we're just going to let our lawyer talk and not let anyone talk. But remember, this is a bidding. It has many components, and the lawyer cannot explain the financial side and should not explain. Okay? Like ako, kung anong kutob ko sa net worth sa iyang Cuerpo, pero pag explain ko og 10-year projection on profits, maulaw ko, nagway ko baga kaya kong face. Kung mayong ko nga, ay muna ang projection. No, we need to have intellectual humility as well. So present all the members, including the resource persons and the observers, and just answer them. Were you part of the negotiations? Did you get a copy of the document? And that's the only way I think we can stop this project by just encouraging and supporting truth-telling.
Truth-telling, yes. To follow on that, there is a question here that asks, how can we make Remolio accountable if he will no longer be in public service, assuming what he said that he may not run anymore?
Make him liable, Zara. Fight it in court. If he cannot be accountable through the power of the vote, he should be made accountable based on existing legal mechanisms.
Right.
And we need to do that. There are already several volunteer lawyers willing to do that because we need to have a restart in this city. If we let this go, then we're going to create a new breed of politicians who think that they can deal with educated Dumaguete people, educated and not just university, educated based on their experiences in their lives, educated the way our fisher folks are educated by the language and nature. If a leader thinks that he can get away with that, we're going to create a breed of these kinds of leaders. So I am very passionate about making him accountable for this.
Right. And to clarify for the one who answered the question, it can be done even as he steps out of the mayor's
Yes.
office.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. There is a question here that I will need to ask you. It asks, where was the mayor on the day that the transmittal was submitted on July 6? His signature was represented for.
I don't know. I don't know where he was, and I didn't even watch the hearing live. I just got it. I just got the link from 3 people, private citizens, and said, "Ma'am, sakto ni, tabuan ni." And so, out of curiosity, even my first question was, kisa man nga company, wako pa ila ani dili man ni siya SM Ayala, ana. Dili po ni siya reclamation, sige kuno bi atong lilion yang SEC. And so immediately the day after, I ordered for the SEC documents. I don't know where he was.
All right. Another question here. In case of how the consultations have been done by far, does it automatically also void the activity as such? I am worried because the councillors, like Ramon and the like, have been around and might say they did the consultations, but let the mayor speak as a resource person.
All right. It's definitely not the consultation in the law. I've checked again and again if all the councillors were invited. Kaya pwede man mag-public hearing outside ang council, and I've attended several all over the country. But definitely that's not what happened. Even I think those who are aligned with the mayor or supportive of the mayor here, some of them did not even attend or are not attending these consultations. The committee secretariat is not there. So if it's a valid public hearing, the secretariat needs to be there. They need to be taking down notes and minutes of the proceedings. So definitely he's going to lose in court if he's going to claim that this is public consultation. And that's why the day they did that, I wrote something, tried to explain it to the people because it's important. It's our responsibility also to explain what's happening. So I tried, nagbisaya ko, and I think their press release suddenly in the evening, gitangtang tong consultation kay info drive na lang daw. So even that is a disrespect for us. Murag, wala na gid nila respect. They really think that if nakalusot sila by calling something a MOA, then they can lusot in everything. And that we should feel insulted.
Right. All right, another question. I saw your post regarding legal remedies that we can sue the proponent from dealing with EM Cuerpo, who has questionable reputation and financial capacity. Who should initiate this step? I think this is the best time to do this. Thank you, attorney.
Yes, there are several. So it could be the councillors who have voted against giving the authorities. So they have standing. A resident of Dumaguete, a citizen, will also have standing. Sectoral groups and organizations will also have standing. This is what's interesting about the graft and corrupt practices law. I've been looking at the jurisprudence, and the standing requirement is very, very loose. Okay, so you can claim your right to health, right to the environment, and the courts have been quite open and embracing of claims of standing.
All right, so legal standing requirement is loose, and if you're a councillor, a resident, a member of a sectoral group, you can initiate, right? You can take this step. Okay, another question we have is, if the agreement between the mayor and EM Cuerpo was already shady from the start, why can't we put a stop on this right now?
We're trying to put a stop. We're trying to stop this particular contract, and we're trying to fight it in the city council. And why the city council? Because that is the platform where all of us would have the potential to express our protest. This is my recognition. The law is powerful, but it is very limited. And unfortunately, in this country, it's limited to a very tiny segment of our population. The moment a case is filed, it becomes the arena of the lawyers and the judges. Kami,
Yeah.
nosebleed language, etc.
Yeah.
But remember, this is also an accountability fight. And the representatives of the people, the council, also need to be accountable, not only in court, but in the very halls where they were elected to represent the people. So they need to answer questions there and in the court. And for me, tungod sa kadaghan natong trabaho, napatay day job, full-time mother pa ko diri, work at home mama, I'm taking my time. Kaya ko nga, ano man kung maugtos na mag-andam ta sa mga research diri, unya mo file pa dito sa kaso nga, dugay pa man nimo prescribe kaning RA 3019, okay? But there are other groups ready, nakakasa kung sa Tagalog pa nakakasa na ang katong the moment it is signed, challenge in court to try and stop it para dili mo proceed to the PRA process. That's okay. Don't worry about that. There are lawyers doing that. But I just want to emphasize that we shouldn't be enamored with file cases now, because they will lose their obligation to explain to the people in a platform not monopolized by an elite group of professionals called lawyers. Okay?
Right.
Ano man lawyers or ay pwede mo protesta, di ba? So that's always my advocacy na. Okay ra ng law, chill ra ta sa law kay na may daghang nag-andam.
Right. And also, it's the right of the people to exercise, considering the officials are elected and are supposed to be representative of the people. And so I think that is the venue that we should be facing at this moment, since it's still open, and especially because it's a small community, like you said, Okay.
And that's why, Zara, my advocacy really is don't vilify them. Maybe a few of them who have been so bad, displayed extremely bad behavior, but many of them are decent people. They're our friends. They're from, good people. We know them. We know their hearts. So I think we should fight with good data and the truth. This is not like your typical corrupt national politician. They are young leaders who will be listening to us. And that's why we need to work hard. I don't even have to do all this research. Our volunteers, lawyers don't have to put out all the analysis, but we are doing it. Why? Because we believe that their sense of decency will let them overcome whatever fear or maybe, pressure they're getting from the mayor. Sense of decency. That's all I'm praying for our councilors.
Right, the sense of decency, and of course the respect for the office also. The people have placed them there, and I think it would warrant some due diligence, as you would say earlier, right? So a follow-up to that is, how can we as citizens reach out to the legislators? I believe you've mentioned how the lawyers have prepared opinions, research, etc. But how about the ordinary citizens?
Write to them. And that's why I took a chance. I wrote to the vice mayor as chair of the city and said, can I speak? Because there's a provision here that allows a regular citizen to speak. And so I did. I still reach out to them. I have their emails. I send them materials. If you're not a lawyer and if you know them, reach out to them. Tell them, we want to tell you something. We want to have a conversation. Can we have coffee? Can we have a Zoom meeting? I don't know, with our batchmates, with our kauban sa biking or whatever. Reach out to them. Dili man ni sila mga gods na mga garbuso po. They're politicians. I hope that they will listen to you. And I've been doing that. And it's hard work. It takes a lot of time. But it has to be done. We cannot isolate them because I know that they're also under extreme pressure from so many fronts.
Right. All right. Another question we have: why would the city have to expropriate if this project were to be done inland when this is an unsolicited proposal? Isn't finding suitable land the proponent's problem?
That's a perfect question, actually, because mayor has been saying that, lisod ko nung mag-expropriate 6 years na daw. But if you have an investor really willing to invest here and the investor is convinced, he will buy the land. And that will be very good for our local landowners and even our local businesses. And in fact, Zara, in the community development plan, couple that with a video on YouTube of the master plan of Lupa Dumaguete, the party, the mayor was saying that's exactly his plan. Spread out the development into the barangays so that the barangays can also co-own or co-manage some of this infrastructure, thus also increasing also their revenues in the barangay. So dili lang katong isla ang madato ng mga barangay. So even to be candid, Zara, when I was hearing the mayor present that when he was running, yung ko, pwede, so yung idea. Kuan, kanang thoughtful, sama-sama, win-win, kunya, very respectful of who Dumaguete is, what Dumaguete is all about. So I really don't know why suddenly he just forgot everything that he promised to his people. It's not that hard. I mean, you can convince people. We've already convinced people to invest and buy lands in Dumaguete. We're seeing that. It's slow and it's hard, but nobody said being mayor is easy. And bringing development is easy.
Right. So to follow up on that, this issue has been raised. It's been brought up to the Senate hearing be able to stop this project. The Environment Committee under Villar is bleak. Gordon is also pro-Duterte, who favors China. And I forgot the other committee you mentioned in one of your posts, Attorney.
Legal question, Usa. Can a Senate committee hearing stop a government project? The clear answer is no, it cannot legally. The Senate has no power of injunction. It's a totally different mechanism. I think the value of a Senate hearing is to add pressure. Okay? Now it's no longer a tiny city being threatened by environmentally destructive project. Okay, so there is a graft and corruption component. There is a security component here. So I'm hoping, because I saw that the sponsor is Risa Ontivera, so I did a quick check. She's only committee chair of Women and Gender, but based on the language of the resolution, I used to write these resolutions a lot in the Senate. Based on the language, maadto tinuod, maadto na ni Villar, Gordon, and also potentially Lacson. So I think if you have connections in their offices, you also encourage them that this is a worthy case to investigate and to schedule it right away. I know after the SONA, after the president's speech, mulaylo gamay ng Senate and Congress, but mubalik na og high energy na pod because they're just trying to rest from all crises of the now, but then they go back to do investigation. So I'm thankful that Senate resolution is there. It's also getting a lot of, it also helps Dumaguete because it gets the attention also of national media, which is important for the fight. Kanang daghantang mga analysis that did not come only locally. We also have analysis from friends of the city. I just saw, actually, before I entered the Zoom room, na even the architects of Cebu issued a statement in support of the statement of the architects of Dumaguete. So that's both sweet and very powerful. Wow. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And so to clarify, the resolution in the Senate is for an investigation in aid of legislation. Is that correct?
Yes. And so my usually what happens in aid legislation is, well, they investigate all the environment, the whatever component, and it's required for the chair of the committee to, usually the end of the committee report will enumerate what they want to change in existing law. So my bolang kristal, Madam Auring prediction is that they're gonna try and amend the PPP rules. They're gonna try and amend also, perhaps even introduce new laws on possibly prohibiting offshore reclamation. I don't know. I mean, I've done a few of these major investigations in the past, and we also were able to introduce some reforms, including reforms in the Anti-Money Laundering Act, which is now already a law. So I'm also quite proud to be part of that investigation in aid of legislation. Wala na meaning, dapat required mo nga, dili mo mag-say grandstanding. At the end of the day, you need to tell the people that these are the laws that need to change. Sayang lang na kay paggawa sa committee report, wala namang kayo mabasa. But that's actually a substantial part of the committee report sa kaning tanan nga investigations. But of course, wala na dili na magawa sa media kay dili naman na siya sexy. May cover. Boring kayo mo na yung mga laws of Ombudsman. Will cover that. Wala na. Mas exciting tong mag-chagit-chagit sila in the Senate.
Right. So that actually answers a follow-up question to that, because there was a question on what could be the consequences of the probe, which is better legislation, amendments to existing legislation.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct, Zara. And usually if it's a blue ribbon investigation, the report itself will be sent to the ombudsman. So that will be signed by the chairperson of the Blue Ribbon. He will say, these are the recommendations. Now do whatever you want to do with it, but we're encouraging the filing of these cases. And then enumerate na transmit a letter. And that's what happened, for example, on the PCSO fund mess case that actually eventually led to Gloria being put to jail. Gikan to siya sa Blue Ribbon investigation.
Wow. Okay, powerful then. Powerful outcome. Another question related to this Senate venue. Is it possible for the law school fraternity brothers of the mayor to intervene in the inquiry in aid of legislation in the Senate?
I hope not. I didn't even know the mayor had a fraternity. I hope not, but if people really support the mayor here, intervene would be it's a bad word, They could try to also influence the senators not to take on the investigation. The way people like us will be influencing the senators to take on the investigation. So kanya-kanyang kanya-kanyang convince. So let's not cast doubts in their motives. Kasi tuog gid sila nga tsakto gid ang mahitabo ang contract.
Right. Okay. We have one here. You may have touched on this already, but I'll read the question anyway. Are there national laws or local ordinances requiring the consultation of national agencies other than PRA and DENR, such as DOLE regarding labor, the military, and BI intelligence regarding security concerns, DOST regarding technology for any land reclamations financed by a foreign state-owned company? If not, should we legislate an ordinance to this fact to ensure necessary due diligence on these matters?
Excellent question. Unfortunately, wala. Dili siya consultation ng mga provisions. So for example, for NEDA, kinahanglan nga i-present mo ang project sa NEDA, but dili siya kanang ang NEDA mo konsulta sa mga tao. So that's actually an excellent proposal.
Okay. Wala pa. All right. There is a question here going back to the city. Can you sue the city legal officer for negligence in providing harmful and corrupt advice on the JVA?
That's quite difficult, Zara, because one, we don't know if he was the one who gave legal advice. He can be sued under RA 3019 Anti-Graft and Corrupt Practices Act because he is a legal officer, he is an official member. So recommending a corrupt contract will make him liable. Okay, and that's why I think I posted last night, in tawon ang mga members sa tanan nga PPP selection committee, get advice, legal advice. Ayaw mo pag-depend sa legal advice ni Mayor. Okay, I've been through at least 4 of these investigations. Kaning usually member of the procurement committee, mag-lawyer up na the moment makadawat sila sa what do you call it? Invitation letter, lawyer up na tanan. And then some of them are brave enough, mo adto sa Blue Ribbon, Maingon na nga, ma'am, kanang wala gid mi ka-appeal ani nga kontrata, kanang dili kay mi ka-appeal sa mga meeting, matest na ma'am kay ang mga minutes wala gani mi didto niya. What will we do? And then the blue ribbon lawyers will help them draft the affidavit. Some of them, if their testimony is really strong, we're able to support them by already recommending that they be placed as state witnesses. Ang state witnesses manggod maka dapat naagid siya valuable information about the case. So usually ang mga state witness in a lot of these corruption cases are those who were actually part of the selection committee or the bidding committee sa lang naman ko procurement pa man to mga cases na under the procurement law. So also reach out to them if you know them, please. If you know, I know several on that list, and I've started reaching out to them, just saying, ma'am, kumusta man kanang ma'am, sir, appeal bagid mo ani, pwede kong istorya ninyo kung unsa yung level sa inyong participation, because we also want to save these people from the legal risk. I mean, don't worry about the mayor. He has the arsenal, he has lawyers, he has money to take care of his legal risk. But these people, they probably, kanang typical nga mga investigations na mo before in tawon nga, ma'am, gipalingkod rigid mi dito attorney, gipalingkod rigid mi, wala mi ka-attend sa tanan nga meeting. And you immediately see the level also of I don't know, neglect and gross disrespect also for the rights of the people. So please, if you know any of them and you know them to be good people, reach out to them as well.
All right. There's another question here relating to the city legal officer. Despite the glaring red flags in the technicalities of the documents, why do you think the city legal officer is defending this project?
I don't know, Zara. I have sleepless nights about it. He's a good person, actually one of the lawyers that I respect and also like as a person. So I'm always praying for him for clarity and also for his family. I'm sure his family, I don't know if he has children, I'm sure they're also under a lot of pressure and scrutiny from the community. Yeah. So I don't know. And that's why it's a difficult case for me. And I think you heard in the hearing that we're also distant relatives. So it's painful. This case is very painful to me.
Yeah. In relation to that, has the city legal office or the council responded to the freedom of information providing the attached documents required with an unsolicited proposal? Perhaps they're asking if they've given the documents that was requested.
The vice mayor manifested yesterday that she has requested the selection committee, and the selection committee said that they are still photocopying the documents. So I hope that in the next hearing, they will release it. For my freedom of information request, I did ask and sent an official letter on July 19, Monday. The city administrator who chairs the selection committee passed my letter to the city legal and said he will decide on it. The city legal has not contacted me for his action. I also filed a freedom of information request directed to the city mayor just for the documents on the negotiation. Documents he already signed and should have been easy to produce. No response. It has been 9 days. So I don't know if napamoy mga time, and if there are lawyers and law students in the room, can you please research kung pwede na batang mo report sa Anti-Red Tape Act Commission. I know they have an efficient online reporting, but I just don't have the time to research.
Right. Okay. We go now to the public consultations. There's a question here where Councillor Pertices mentioned that it is only the City Council who is authorized to hold public consultations. You also mentioned this earlier, that first step or the first consultation. Apparently, the mayor has done his own so-called public consultations. Is this even legal?
It's legal, Zara, because it's not prohibited for the mayor to be conducting public consultation. But is it the legal public consultation that will respond to the requirements of the PPP ordinance? It is not. Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with the mayor going around doing his info drives. Maybe that's his way of, I don't know, introducing the project to the people. But he can very well let the city council do that. Actually, this one, if I were a highly sensitive member of the council, I'd say, so many siya, uy, wala man siya feeling, wala man siya authority to do that. Why do his own? But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about that. So please allow him to do that if it is his way to inform the people. My hope and my call to the mayor is just that please explain the provisions of the JVA and the law, and do not be the typical politician that promises heavens when the document itself does not support your promise. We just want a sense of decency again and some truth. Zara, the fields of law involved here are quite easy to understand. I'm not at all stressed with the law and legal part. Mas na-stress ko aning murag breakdown of our values as a people, an attack to our hearts and our souls, and who we are in Dumaguete. Chill ka ita, pero maka-stress na murag giuwat, na inyong patangawag PPP contract, and then today, kita na ko, nga na-adjust Swiss challenge. So kana ba, murag gibuang, wala na ko sophisticated words. It's just, murag yung gibuang. And if we allow this, it's really terrible.
Right. I think the way you presented the laws and even the documents, and yesterday the background of the MOU and the ordinance, it seems pretty clear cut that there are infirmities and there are recourses that can be taken. But I think I understand it when you say that the bigger issue here is really the breakdown of decency and just the respect for the office again, explaining things in a certain way, and when these things can be verified. In connection with that, there's actually a question here asking about the claim that the mayor made in the interview with Karen Davila. He said that there were no more corals in Dumaguete. Will there be legal consequences for him for this false claim?
I hope so, Zara. I'm sure there's a law somewhere that we can use. I was actually very embarrassed when he said that, because I knew right away, knowing how Dumaguete people are so passionate about our ocean, kabalog yun ko, the moment mo gawas ni nagi mo dive. And true enough, nagi nang dive. And so, naulawan yun siya. So many, joke maning. And it's easily verifiable. But he tried to backtrack and said something like, oh, I didn't say wala namatay ang corals, but I watched the video again, and, for lack of a more graceful term, ay putag wata mayor, oy.
All right. We have a question here. What is the effect to the notice of award that was issued by the PPP committee, since it appears that there were certain procedures that were not followed, and it appears that EM Cuerpo is not qualified based on the documents going around?
Honestly, Zara, based on our study of existing jurisprudence, kani mga decided cases na, the moment they issued that resolution, their liability for RA 3019 already began. Okay? Because there are different levels of liability. Accepting the contract when it is incomplete, liability. Negotiating, continuing to negotiate, even if they know that this is an unqualified contractor, liability. Recommending the award, liability kicks in. And samot na, ug mapermahan ni, ma-include na gyud ang atong mga konsehal. Okay? Because even now, there are at least 2 cases where even just authorizing the mayor also already creates liability. Dili kinahanglang permahan. Okay? But there are more cases at the moment permahan sa mayor, because everything else was flawed, then everybody nga involved will be liable. And that's why sige na po intawag hangyo nga ayaw sa gyud ninyo, if for your own sake, ayaw i-vacate na nga authority because mga appeal gyud ta tanan. Wala ko tayo appeal kay wala man ni pirma sila, mga appeal sila tanan. So tabangi sila.
Yeah. So liability has already attached. Okay, we have another question here. One requirement before an application can be filed with the PRA is the reso of no objection. If we, the people, continue to object, they shouldn't be able to get that resolution of no objection, right? I hope that would not boil down to a vote by the council.
I'm very sad to be the deliverer of bad news, but it will go down to the vote of the council. And we already have initial information from the PRA that all they need is that resolution as proof. Because the PRA, taas kayo na ang process. Wala na slide time mo ingon nga, ay resolution of no objection pero magkuan sa ta, magbalik na pud tag consult sa people of Dumaguete. It's not in their mandate. And again, that's why I've been listening to the videos of the mayor and the videos of the hearing. Mura kong makaingon, asa kung sila nakukuan nga mag-consultation pa daw ang PRA nga. It is the resolution of no objection that is proof of the PRA that they have actually, that Dumaguete has actually done the consultation. So that's why all of us, we need to be alert and pressure the councillors at this point, because lisod kaayo if we lose here.
Yeah, pressure the councillors. All right, we have another one related to that. May I ask if it is legal to disallow groups or individuals to join the so-called consultation? Is there a law which we can cite if ever we are not allowed to join?
Well, Zara, it's not illegal to prevent people from participating because the mayor has framed this as a privately run consultation. Okay, private man daw, privately funded, in a private kuan, walay really ni part sa council. So it's not illegal to prevent them. Unless they resort to some kind of violence and threatening people, kana pwede ta mangita dito sa daghan kaayong mga potential crimes in the revised penal code. So dili na siya illegal. Okay?
Right.
But we know, and that's why I teach this in my human rights class, not everything rests on the sphere of the law. There's also whether or not it is right or wrong. Now, if he wants to be a leader for this city, then he should also not do the wrong thing. Kay bastos man ba? That's why people are starting to distrust him more and more, because nga namang itago. Kung info drive na, di open na lang. Or at the very least, let the media come in. Okay, para maminaw ta. Kung naa sila concerned about, concerned about protocols, health protocols, I will respect that. They're taking care of the people, but let the media come in. Right. And so far, wala man, di ba? I think Zara ang na Facebook Live.
And also, I think the consultations that are going around, or the info drive, if you may, isn't the legal one that is under the law, correct? You did mention this earlier.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. This is not the consultation that will let them comply with the PPP ordinance.
Right. Okay. We have questions on the prospect of a referendum, a couple. The first one is, how real is the prospect of a referendum, and what can we do to ensure that it will not be manipulated?
Last question first answered. What can we do that it will not be manipulated? We have to do a lot. So monitoring, etc. But I'll explain first the referendum and why I'm very wary of that proposal by the mayor. Because remember, 2 stages mani basta PPP contract, okay? Resolution to allow him to enter into the agreement, to start the PRA process, and then ang ordinance nato musulod lang after na ma-file, ma-sign ning JVA. So nanatay binding contract. Ang purpose of referendum will say the registered voters will approve, amend, or reject any ordinance. So what is this ordinance? It will be the ordinance that will approve or affirm the terms and conditions of the signed JVA. So imagine, okay, so na-sign na ang JVA, siguro magpaugat na dito sa PRA, Dumaguete will be spending so much time, even if we're not spending for the trips to PRA and all this, we will be putting people to process the application. At taxpayers' money na to. to prepare the documents, to etc. So that's still cost to the city. And then later on, ma-reject pa by ordinance, it will be a hard fight. So I think the mayor, maybe on this part of the law, he studied it. He thinks that he can have the machinery also to try and get a vote in his favor, but it also is going to be very late in the game. That's my personal opinion. So I'm not gonna fall into his trap. It's nice to hear, di ba? Oh, the voice of the people. But balik ka sa PPP ordinance. What will trigger the application? It's going to be authority from the city council. And that will be resolution. Pili na to na pwede hikapon through referendum because referendum is clear. It's to reject an ordinance.
Okay. That's good that you mentioned that. There is another question that touches on that or is answered by that. The question is, do you think a referendum is necessary to know the real sentiment of the people from Dumaguete? Do you think we can suggest or we could result to this kind of a process to really know the voice of the people in Dumaguete with regards to the proposed 174 hectare reclamation? What are your thoughts about this? And you have shared a little bit of that.
Yeah. In fact, Zara, the mayor mentioning that as a remedy for the people, even before they released all the documents and accurate information on the project, him offering that as a remedy is an insult to the philosophy of a referendum. Because a referendum, remember, is an approve, disapprove vote. But in order to have an effective true referendum, it has to be fueled by correct information. So kung dili ka mo release o dokumento, mura kag nagpili og mga tao nga mo approve, disapprove without the right information. That's really an insult also. Because it's just the mayor trying to egg us on and say, sige, vote, yes or no. Kaya anak man daw in democracy. But he forgets that the essence of democracy, and that's why I like reading philosophy and political science, Zara, and history also. The essence of democracy is that the people know what they are voting for so that they're able to decide really well for themselves. But we know that's not the kind of referendum that will happen if he is really determined to push this along. If he can pressure councillors, even lawyers in the council to following what he wants, he can very well pressure the ordinary citizen. And we will not allow that.
Right. We have another question here about the city's comprehensive land use plan. Is there a legal basis where reclamation project must be approved in the CLUP of a city, specifically with this magnitude area covered, with this kind of a footprint?
I've been looking for the CLUP, Zara, and if anyone in the room has a copy, can you please send it to me? But if the development plan does not have reclamation there, I'm sure the CLUP also won't have reclamation. But on the more technical question, ideally, if it talks about changing the integrity of the land and territory of Dumaguete, then it should also go through consultations.
All right. Okay, we go now to MPAs. So the Dumaguete City Council has declared several parts of our seas as MPAs. What does it mean to be a marine protected area, and how does national law protect these areas?
Okay, that's correct, Zara. I do have copies of the 4 MPA ordinances of Bantayan, Looc, Banilad, and there's Mangnao, I think. So what essentially the national law allows is for the city to establish marine protected areas, and in that marine protected area and a certain area buffer zone, buffer zone, dili pwede ang certain activities like destroying the corals, introducing or having activities that will harm also the whatever living resources are in the MPA. So there's several of what you can do and what you cannot do. MPAs are also revenue generating areas. So the barangay can also charge fees, for example, for snorkeling, etc. And actually having this MPA ordinance, and I've talked to some of the people who have fought for these MPA ordinances. Some of them have taken care of the MPAs for I think 2 decades na ilang istorya. it went through extensive debate and extensive conversation. So it's quite disappointing also that whenever the MPA issue is raised, and I heard the mayor twice in a national TV interview and then in his info drive na yan na lang daw ang buhaton, either lihayan ang mga corals or isulod og aquarium or ibalhin. But we already know from the experts that kaning 1 hectare kuno, I don't know, I can't get the numbers straight. I can share the technical computation. It actually costs millions to even regrow corals. But again, we go back to the basics, Zara. Why do you have to do that? Ano maglihay-lihay man ta sa corals, na pwede man ta mo develop sa yuta nato madaghan pa. Makatabang pa ta sa mga local landowners. The mayor seems to be saying na ano diri mas dali ning 23 billion, but that's not governance. Governance is having the patience and the endurance to do difficult things for your people. And just because it's hard doesn't mean it can't be done. He just needs to be a better mayor.
Yeah, governance is having the patience and endurance to do the right thing for the people. Thank you for that. We have another legal question. Which one will prevail in terms of weight? RA number 9147, an act providing for the conservation and protection of wildlife resources and their habitats, appropriating funds therefore, or the National Building Code or the Local Government Code favoring the establishment of the reclamation project?
There's no straight answer, but just looking at the way the courts have decided, it always leans in favor of environmental protection. But I'm going to say, and that's why I try to be diverse in my tools, even if I'm a lawyer. But we know that fighting it out in court takes a lot of resources and also takes a lot of our time. So we need to be more creative and to work together as a community. Kaya dili gid madahan ang tanang solution, ang tanang problema sa atong country, dili lang, many times the law just falls short. But the legal question is, it leans in favor of environmental protection. But of course, kamo nga na aware sa mga building code and other local government code, and the fact that reclamation is still legal in this country knows that sometimes the lean is actually a tip over.
Well, it's an interesting thing to note, actually, that the Philippines has one of the most extensive environmental laws. I actually did a study on that before. My thesis was on something related to the environment. The problem is also that I think these things take a lot of time, not just the time of the lawyer, but really time to go through the system. So I like that you are advocating for a creative solution outside of the judicial system. Okay, we have questions here regarding Cuerpo again. Given Cuerpo is subcontracting a China-based state-owned company, Polychangda, could the state possibly provide the financing? Could the state of China possibly provide the financing?
Okay, let's be accurate. We have the document that Cuerpo will subcontract to a state-owned company, but the mayor has not sent that same MOU to be verified to the city council. He did mention it daw, kaya wala man ko kita sa video, he mentioned Polychangda already daw sa SK na info drive. Okay, so let's just be clear, wala pa na nila gi-admit. But if they do admit it, they are also required by our own Swiss Challenge ad na si Polychangda dapat i-qualify po as a subcontractor. And if indeed, if ang amo wala mi, if we didn't look hard enough, basig registered gid siya, basig pick up gid siya, then dili na doubt nga the state of China will be providing the money because it is a state-owned company. State-owned meaning the government of China invests in it. Maybe na sila mga shareholders na private, but knowing China, so I'm also the program director of our international NGO. I cover Asia. I have a China team. Knowing China, majority yun ang state ana sa state sa ilahang company. Dili man na sila magpa-minority. That's China. It's also quite a powerful and smart nation. So yes, it will be a country that supporting this company. which is a little disturbing because we know what China is doing in our country now, and we know their interest. It's not just military, it's also control of resources, potentially control of access to information, which should worry us because if you look at the project components, suddenly, whoa, wireless communication and telephones. So, and let's not be naive because they're also doing that in other countries. So, dili na ta ma-surprise na muna ilang mga project components aside from the reclamation.
Right. All right. It was also mentioned during the last session that Lani Ramon was the representative from the council to the PPP committee. She should know then, right, if EM Cuerpo is qualified or not, and she should be able to defend with data the query of EM Cuerpo's qualifications.
Yes, I agree. And if the process was followed correctly, then Lani Ramon should have her own copies of these documents. But we must remember that in more than one hearings already, she was saying again and again, wala lagi draft PPP contract. Okay, wala pa yung mga dokumento kay wala pa ta nag-apply. Okay, so that alone, if I were the mayor, if I were a member of the PPPSC committee, magdalagan ako sa mayor's office ug mingon, Mayor, igagna na siya please kay mga prisugid mi tanan ani kay ni recommend ra bagid mig award. Sige siya ingon nga walay draft PPP contract. So my call to Councilor Ramon, please protect the other people. I know that she's a little bit on the privileged side. She's rich, she's a businesswoman, she can afford lawyers, but please just study and take a little bit of care when you say things on record that increases the legal risks of the other members of the PPP selection committee.
Right. There's a question here that asks about how about boycotting the businesses of these pro-174 politicians?
My answer to that is it's not illegal. So if you want to do it, please do it. Okay. I do boycott a lot of businesses also in my own job. So my work is business and human rights. So if I know that the company is really not moving in terms of human rights commitment, I do boycott them. So if it's not illegal and if you know that they have businesses, then that's your right. That's also part of the plethora of liberties that the Constitution grants us.
Perhaps that might be the face of their protest if they wish.
That might be the face of your protest. And it is a powerful face. We know that even the biggest companies in the world are quite resistant when people start calling for boycotts. So even students can do that.
Right. Okay, we have a handful more questions here. Let's start with this one. From your legal experience with politicians and shady deals, do you think this is a done deal? To put it more clearly, do you think money has already circulated to influence a favorable outcome to this project despite the mounting opposition? I cannot understand the insistence and persistence of those who are pushing for this project, especially in the face of mounting opposition.
I was asked that question because I went and gave a briefing to the priests in the city. And if we're asking about proof beyond reasonable doubt for conviction, I'd rather not say. But of course, because of the nature of the insistence, we should not discount that these people are financially compromised. Not discount. We're not accusing them, but it is always possible. Okay. But I'm also looking at this from a more reflective point of view. I'm trying to understand them as people. What's driving this? What are their values? Where did we also fail as a community that we suddenly are creating these kinds of people as our leaders? So yeah, if we're talking over breakfast, over coffee, or some bottles of beer, we can be more creative in our language and why we think this is happening. But I think for the sake of community, we can only try to think that maybe basin, pero I don't know, let's hope that they are being driven by a far greater incentive or motivation or pressure.
Right. All right. Another question here, or actually it's more of a comment. In your past interviews, you mentioned the assets of PM Cuerpo. I don't think it will even qualify it for reclamation, since it cannot even qualify for a quadruple A PCAB license.
Yeah, I'm really doubtful, Zara, and that's why I've taken the effort to talk to as many bankers as I can. Just with a
Right.
simple question, uy, basa ka nilang FSB kung ikaw may kuan ani ka ng loans officer, pautahon ba ni mo ni siya? You know, just a simple due diligence question, and no one has said na pwede na ko ni siyang pautahon. So please, counselors, call the experts. Ayaw ra mo depend sa unsay isulti ni inyong colleague si Councilor Ramon as a member of the PPP Selection Committee. There are a lot of expertise in the city.
Right. Now, if there were no documents available with LGU Dumaguete, what's the basis for having the unsolicited proposal subjected to the Swiss challenge?
I don't know, Zara. I don't know. That's my fear. If there really were no documents, then wala, nag-imbento og Swiss challenge. And that is fatal, Zara. We know that's fatal. If it is an incomplete proposal, then end of story na dapat. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think kung ako'y konsehal, I'll just ask, lanyahon na ako PPP Selection Committee, nakadawat ka draft JVA contract, ikaw, nakadawat ka. Okay, and if some of them will say wala, then dapat game over na. Kay ngano hindi man gidawat, ngano nag-negotiate man mo, incomplete man na yang documents. Diba? Mo kuan ra gayta pa enroll ra ganita sa eskwelahan, daghan kayong requirements niya, really with enrollment kani pa 23 billion. Really, it doesn't require legal genius, Zara. I'm such an average lawyer for that matter, and really nagay ko kinahanglang mag-heavy lifting. Just common sense and truth-telling.
Truth-telling, yeah. And I think even by the very name itself, a Swiss challenge, supposedly it's taken from the policy, national policy of the Swiss to be neutral in World War I and World War II. So maybe even just that very basic of the name. All right. So just a couple of more questions. Attorney, when is the right time to file for an injunction? How much longer do we need to wait?
I think the most prudent time would be the moment the JVA is signed. But there are other groups of lawyers who are exploring the possibility of filing an injunction earlier. And I'm quite excited also with their theory. So yes, we are asking for volunteer lawyers who are willing to explore all possible theories, because this is also a time for legal innovation. And that's why, Zara, ang mga tao think that I am stressed out. Actually, I'm not, because I love studying. So mura kong ma-excite learning new things. I don't know. Mura kong ipa-recite ninyo, pabayaro na gyud ta mo ani. My students are probably saying, "Da, recite lagi siya more than 1 hour." Kabalos me.
ikaw mo yung hot seat.
Hot seat, murag wala ka tubags first question.
Pero maayo kay mga tubag, attorney, ay maayo kayo. Okay, naatay, we have pahabol nga question dire. Based on my quick search, there were allegations that Wow Cow is the place where government officials negotiate corrupt deals. Should we be worried or alarmed that those who went to China were accompanied by the owner of Wow Cow? This was mentioned by Lani Ramon in yesterday's session. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Hala, I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. Luya po, guys. Is that the restaurant? Luya po.
It's the first time I've heard of it.
Yeah, I don't know. But there are those places. I can name 3, but that would be libelous. I know where the deals are. Daghan pang nailhan na sa Manila. Sa Manila, kay Latag-asa na nakita. Musunod ko dito manimbarot na dana kong balahibo kay kabalugid ko na illegal nang itabo.
Underhanded dealings. All right. Okay. One more question. Noxy announced today that the mayor agreed to businessmen's appeal to hold on the MOU signing. Have you heard of this?
Oh, no, I have not.
All
I've
right.
been very busy with my day job today. But that's good. That probably you should, scare the councilors less kay so narabay ga pending para bang ilang authority. But really, Zara, in terms of this authority, if the council wants to be sincere with having these public consultations, they have a special session on Monday. I-vacate na lang ng authority oy. Murag bastos manggod nga magkonsulta kay tanaw atong ipangutana ng mga tao kung layhan ba sila ani nga kontrata pero nanada ay authority sila. Murag sa binuang man ni joke man ni. So I think I also call on whoever the groups that will be participating in this consultation. I think it's important for us to register our protest na out of propriety, respetuhi po tao ng mga taga Dumaguete. I-vacate sa good na, di bito na kinahanglan sa inyong mayor sa pag-start sa PRA process.
Right. And on that note, there's another comment actually that just came in. It's a question. Is there a centralized committee or group to the opposition effort whereby all actions are monitored and cross-referenced for completeness, accuracy, and compliance of procedural requirements? This group could provide guidance to different groups that actions are appropriate and complete. For example, that opposition letters are valid and all necessary agencies are copied to constitute a formal opposition letter.
Wala pa, Zara. Okay, I was in a planning meeting today because a lot of groups are also asking now we need to organize the efforts. There is already, and I think it will be officially announced by Monday kung unsa ang mechanism, unsaon pag-reach out to actually join this particular task force or organizing group. I think it's important. So I'm very happy that question is raised because honestly, ako po murag usahay kapoy kay sa ako mangayo og kopya sa ordinance, then sa ako everything goes, and I can imagine also the amazing youth groups. I'm sure daghan po kay mangutanan nila if there's a way for us to organize all these things and actually to organize the volunteers also. Daghan kayong volunteers just waiting for things to be as well. But I also understand, Zara, I'm sure there will be leaders coming out to organize other task forces. But things unfolded so fast. July 6 pa ba yan niyo? July 7. So, coming together and, analyzing and finding all these documents and then organizing does take time, especially for a city nga. Wala ba yata naana doon yung aning I don't know, controversy.
Right. But if anything, I was very surprised to learn yesterday that all of this started around July 6, July 7, and we see the efforts that have been mounted. I think, if anything, that's nothing short of amazing to see how everybody who could do something did. And are still trying.
I agree, Zara, and I've been a part of major campaigns sa kanang mga Manila na orgs. But this one is so natural because the youth are doing their thing, the artists are doing their thing. So wala ni siya kanang gi-organize nga naay lideran. And I think it should be a moment for us to celebrate the leaders within ourselves, no matter what your personality is. So ako, I'm learning a lot. I try to spend the last hour of my day reading the technical materials. No, ano din yung science, pwede dito linugon dire. So I need to find time to learn.
Right. My apologies, attorney, but we have a few more questions that came in. I'd just like to air them and ask them, direct them to you, right? Okay. When can the ombudsman come in?
If you file an RA 3019 case,
Okay.
Corrupt Practices Act, so they're gonna have to investigate.
Okay. Another one.
I'm sure, but I'm also sure, Zara, that some officers of the ombudsman are already looking at this case, especially because of the national attention.
Right. Yeah. related to that, can we rely on the Senate to conclude their investigation in our favor? I don't think there will be any
No,
conclusion.
there's never a conclusion.
Yeah.
What I just want the people to understand is that we take it for what it is, and understand the political dynamics also inside the Senate, and not to rely on that investigation, because we were able to really grow this protest on our own as Dumaguete. We're fighting this the way Dumagueteños would like to fight this. So let that be the definition of our protest, and not necessarily some national leaders attempt to investigate. We should be thankful for it, but not put all our eggs in that basket.
Yeah, not give it too much hope in terms of changing things around here. There's a forthcoming webinar sponsored by the IBP wherein TRA and PPP Center will share the process in handling unsolicited proposals. What's the legal remedy if the PPPSC is found to have violated the process?
It's still RA 3019, Zara. So it's awarding it to an unqualified contractor, possibly unduly favoring an unqualified contractor. I'm sure there are other lawyers who are still finding other potential liabilities.
Okay.
And of course, there's administrative cases, Zara. Remember, these are both appointive and elected officials.
Yeah. Another one, why can't we simply request documents from the Commission on Audit? The audit team leader of the city is one of the observers and actually signed the PPP Selection Committee's resolution.
I've been trying to think of doing that, Zara, but I have no time. But I think there should be a limit on what we should do as a people, because I think the council should be doing that. You know, even asking documents, I asked first before our council. So come on, do your job. Kapoy na ko, nagkagidlay na ko dere. There was 1 week na wala ko kapangumpra. Tungod aning trying to balance all of this. And kaluoy, basta kong pamilya, wala misudan.
Yeah. How do you react when some netizens refer to you as AGB? It sounds like RBG.
Yeah, I get that on my messenger because my students and former students just send me things. I have no time to read them. Katawa na lang ta, my God, bro, RGB, genius in social justice rights in the Supreme Court to even be, wala kataan na siyang abog siyang tiil. But thank you. Maybe that's an expression of appreciation from Makaulaw.
It is. We'll wait for the memes.
I have actually her book. I have 2 books of RBGs. She's such an icon.
She is an icon. All right, we just have an FYI here. Maybe the Phil Gips is a good source of info about EM Cuerpo.
Yeah, I already have the documents from that database. It's not looking good for the city. But again, when you're not going to post, let the council do their job.
Right. All right. Well, we're down to our last question and a comment after that. I think you've answered this already, but maybe to reiterate and perhaps you could also say a few words to end our session. The question is, what can ordinary people, especially non-lawyers, do to give their share of help in opposing this project?
Show up. Either virtually or in physical forms of protest. They need to see us. I was even struck by one of the priests who prayed over me yesterday, and he said that I think we need to go beyond our pulpits. We also need to talk to the community. Those of us who are privileged enough to attend these learning sessions, go through, learn about the science, talk to the people. And I shared this, I think, with the youth group forum. I told them that when we talk to the people, let's not begin by saying, "Oy, kabalo ba ka man, nga bad ka ini, violation of the law, yada yada yada." I think if we talk to the people, we begin by asking them, "Unsa man siya imuhang damgo para sa imuhang kaugalingon or para sa atong city?" Because you'll realize that their answers are often very simple and can be answered by simple things, not by an unsolicited reclaimed island that will be disastrous not just for the environment but for the soul and the essence of Dumaguete. So go out, talk to your families, talk to the counselors who are at the spotlights now and who are critical in this fight. And for the last few words, I think let's just continue fighting as a community. Fight with the truth and accurate data. Let's work hard and let's not be afraid. And if you are so inclined, if you believe in a higher being, just pray. I've been praying a lot for this, for our fight, and for a sense of calm also. There's a lot of noise everywhere. I always take comfort in the fact that I'm able to sit down for an hour or so of my day while having my coffee and just thinking, why am I doing this? And it's really quite simple because it's the right thing to do. It's not easy, but it's the right thing to do.
Right. Thank you for that. And to those who are asking how you can help, I think at the end of your presentation, you said find the face of your protest, and whatever face that is, whatever it is that you are good at, whatever sphere of influence you may have, whatever talents, time, or skills that you can contribute, that is, or that may be the face of your protest. That may be what you can contribute. So show up, right? And we hope that this evening was a good avenue to ventilate all of these things that are even, all of the views that you've expressed in the past week. I hope that the listeners were able to get more answers to their questions, perhaps get a little bit of a better grasp on the legal dimensions surrounding the issue. But also, we hope that the takeaway tonight would be the fact that this may be less about the legal dimensions, but really more about the community coming together, making their voices heard, letting their reasonableness be made known, and appealing to their leaders to stand up. So I think that was a very good message, and I hope that everyone, in a very heated and controversial issue, everyone would just also learn to be quick to listen and so slow to speak. Maybe take some time to digest all the information first before acting. So thank you very much for your time and effort. And I'm going to read the comment here. Thank you so much, Attorney Golda, for all your selfless efforts for the benefit of Dumaguete. In spite of your busy professional and personal life, you have certainly given us a voice on the national and global scale. More power to you. I echo this. Thank you, Golds. Thank you for...
And thank you for all of Dumaguete. I'm just one voice in all of this. And if I can go back to I call my house my cave, and just be back to my introvert self, I would rather choose that. But I can't do that right now.
Yeah, and we need an advocate. Everyone needs an advocate, and thank you for showing up. All right, so this concludes our evening tonight. And on behalf of the Dumaguete City Host Lions Club and Rotary Club of Dumaguete South, thank you all for joining us. We went a little bit over time, but thank you for your patience. We have some announcements. Stay tuned for the next learning event series next week. We have National Security Impact on August 3. On August 4, the extended impacts of island building and reclamation on marine environments. August 5, we have geological impact. August 11, human impacts and the current status of Philippine coral reefs. And on August 12, the coral reef restoration. So We hope that you could continue to join us at the same time next week and in the first couple of weeks of August. If so inclined, kindly like our FB page. You can get all the information there. You can get links to the YouTube channel that will post recordings of these talks. And you can be updated on all the other upcoming events. If you have any advanced questions for the next topics, you can just send the message to the Facebook page. And on behalf of everyone, have a good evening.